Hello, Symposiast. I'm Dr. Angela Pucan, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today, we have a very interesting topic, which is reincarnation in Theosophy, and more specifically in Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, because you may or may not be familiar with this, but she actually changed her view of reincarnation through her life. So that's going to be the topic for today. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, co-founder and principal theorist of the Theosophical Society, profoundly shaped modern Western esotericism. Over the course of her prolific career, she articulated two distinct views on the cycle of rebirth: metempsychosis and reincarnation, each associated with different phases of her intellectual development. This nuanced evolution in her teachings has often confounded scholars, but a careful re-examination reveals a more coherent trajectory than is commonly acknowledged. In her earlier period, culminating in Isis Unveiled, Blavatsky embraced a doctrine she termed metempsychosis. This teaching posited that humans consist of body, soul, and spirit. Through rigorous occult practice, particularly techniques such as astral projection, the adept could unite soul and spirit in life, thereby achieving immortality. Upon death, the conjoined entity embarked upon a journey through ascending spiritual spheres, culminating in nirvana. However, in certain exceptional cases, such as the premature death of a fetus or the life of someone with severe congenital impairments, Blavatsky allowed for a return to Earth in the same spiritual configuration, which she occasionally labeled reincarnation. This was not the normative reincarnation of later theosophy, but a remedial return to offer the soul a proper chance at immortality. Blavatsky's premature articulation of reincarnation appears in her magnum opus, The Secret Doctrine. Here we see a different model that suggests a continuous cyclical process of individual evolution through successive lives on Earth. Blavatsky here extended the idea of reincarnation beyond the individual. She argued that planets and even the cosmos undergo analogous cycles of death and rebirth. This cosmological vision reflected the theosophical commitment to a universal pattern of spiritual progression. Critics at the time noted inconsistencies between Blavatsky's earlier and later teachings. In response, she attempted to harmonize her doctrines, asserting in publications such as The Theosophist and The Path that her views had remained consistent. While this claim was not entirely accurate, it was not without foundation. Her early teachings had indeed included a form of rebirth, albeit a limited and exceptional one. Theosophy has had a substantial impact on a wide array of modern cultural, religious, and political developments. It influenced the reformulation of Buddhism in Sri Lanka and beyond, helped shape Indian nationalism through the involvement of Theosophists in the Indian National Congress, and attracted key figures such as Mohandas Gandhi. Theosophy also served as a catalyst for new religious movements, most notably anthroposophy, which remains active in fields ranging from education to agriculture. Moreover, the wider impact of Blavatsky's ideas on contemporary spiritualities cannot be overstated. Belief in reincarnation is now widespread across the Western world, often divorced from its traditional Asian religious context. Theosophy played a key role in introducing and legitimizing such beliefs in Western esoteric and New Age circles during the 20th century. In this regard, understanding Blavatsky's thought is essential not only for historians of religion, but for anyone seeking to comprehend the genealogy of modern spiritual currents. So let's have a deep dive into Blavatsky's theory. Or shall I say theories of reincarnation? This episode is based on a peer-reviewed paper by Chase and published in 2017 on Correspondences. You see the front page here. But before we dive brains deep into today's topic, please allow me to remind you that this project of delivering free academic scholarship based on peer-reviewed sources can only exist thanks to your support. So if you have the means and want to help keep this project alive, I would really appreciate it if you consider supporting me on PayPal with donations, or on Ko-fi, or joining my fantastic and growing Patreon community. We have monthly lectures, a book club. You can have one-to-one conversations with me. So check out my Patreon and you will find a lot of what you may be looking for, depending on your chosen tier. And also check out my services at drangelapuka.com. You can have tutoring sessions with me. There are my courses, books. So there's lots there. So please check it out, and also sign up for my newsletter, which is free and available to sign up on my website. And that will give you access to pictures and ponderings that I don't normally post on social media, and will allow you to stay in touch with me regardless of the capricious social media algorithms. So you find all the links in the info box, in bio, in a pinned comment, everywhere. So thank you all so much for considering, and I really hope that you will help this project stay alive. So back to our topic. Although theosophical reincarnation has not always commanded center stage in scholarly discourse, it has attracted a select number of academic studies that have sought to illuminate its unique place within both the theosophical worldview and broader modern religious currents. These explorations have increasingly recognized reincarnation not just as a peripheral tenet, but as one of the core doctrinal pillars of Helena Blavatsky's vision. Ronald Neufeld, in his influential essay In Search of Utopia, Karma and Rebirth in the Theosophical Movement, argued that karma and reincarnation are the two pillars upon which all of theosophical teaching rests. Neufeld maintained that reincarnation, although seemingly absent in Isis Unveiled, was already latent in Blavatsky's early work, claiming her terminology was more muddled than inconsistent. However, this interpretation has not gone unchallenged. Subsequent research, including that by Julie Chase, suggests the differences between Blavatsky's early and later thought are more profound than Neufeld allows. Rather than terminological sloppiness, it appears that Blavatsky underwent a substantial shift in doctrinal emphasis, gradually refining a reincarnation theory that was distinct from the metempsychosis outlined in her earlier text. Neufeld also characterized Blavatsky's teachings on karma and rebirth as fundamentally utopian, suggesting her primary concern was the moral and social implications of these doctrines rather than their metaphysical coherence. Yet this, too, has been revised by closer analysis. While utopian ideals undoubtedly colored Blavatsky's vision, especially the call for universal brotherhood, her writings reveal a strong preoccupation with the philosophical and theosophical underpinnings of rebirth, often in considerable detail. Robert Elwood's contribution, Obligatory Pilgrimage, Reincarnation in the Theosophical Tradition, further contextualizes reincarnation within Blavatsky's mature works, particularly The Secret Doctrine and The Key to Theosophy. Elwood highlighted Theosophy's unparalleled role in popularizing reincarnation in the Anglophone world, noting that the movement's appropriation of Eastern ideas was far from passive. Blavatsky's synthesis, heavily drawing from Western esoteric traditions such as Gnosticism and Kabbalah, was structured through a framework she identified as the ancient wisdom. Elwood convincingly argued that despite its Sanskritic vocabulary, Blavatsky's cosmology often resonated more with Neoplatonism than with Orthodox Hindu or Buddhist models. Walter Hanegraaff added another dimension in his New Age religion and Western culture, noting that Blavatsky's doctrine of reincarnation was shaped not only by Indian religions, but also by Enlightenment-era European philosophies of progress and evolution. He argued that theosophical reincarnation should be understood as part of the broader temporalization of the great chain of being, a paradigm in which spiritual ascent through successive incarnations was aligned with evolutionary ideals. Blavatsky, in this reading, did not import Indian notions of reincarnation wholesale, but reconfigured them within a Western framework of spiritual progression, fortified by a rationalizing doctrine of karma as moral causality. Importantly, Hanegraaff challenged the assumption that reincarnation was secondary to karma in Blavatsky's system. On the contrary, her frequent assertion that karma and reincarnation were inextricably interwoven suggests she viewed them as co-essential. Reincarnation for Blavatsky was not just a metaphysical curiosity, but a mechanism for moral retribution and cosmic justice, extending not only to individuals but to worlds and universes. Indeed, she maintained that entire planetary systems underwent cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, embedding the principle of reincarnation into the very fabric of the cosmos. Helmut Zander's History of Soul Migration in Europe contextualized theosophical reincarnation within the broader European landscape of rebirth beliefs. He acknowledged Blavatsky's awareness of Greek metempsychosis, biblical allusions, and Egyptian conceptions of the soul's journey. Nevertheless, he concluded that Theosophy's vision of reincarnation defied systematic classification, blending Asian and European components into a model too complex to be reduced to either tradition. This hybridity, Zander argued, reflects the cultural entanglement that characterizes Theosophy's place in the history of modern religion. Olaf Hammer, in his critical study Claiming Knowledge, approached the question of theosophical reincarnation through the lens of legitimization strategies. He argued that theosophists employed various rhetorical tools, invoking ancient manuscripts, Mahatma letters, and scientific-sounding terminology to stabilize reincarnation as a core doctrine. Within less than a decade, he noted, reincarnation had evolved from a controversial innovation to a universal principle positioned as the esoteric truth underlying all world religions. Hammer also drew attention to the racialized and Orientalist features of theosophical cosmology, arguing that Blavatsky's evolutionary narratives situated humanity within a hierarchy of races and spiritual advancement. What emerges from this body of scholarship is a picture of theosophical reincarnation as a doctrine far richer, more contested, and more historically significant than often assumed. Rather than being a simple borrowing from the East, it was a complex synthesis informed by Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, Enlightenment evolutionism, and reinterpreted Hindu-Buddhist ideas. It formed a cornerstone of Blavatsky's esoteric worldview, justifying not only individual rebirth, but the moral architecture of the universe itself. As such, reincarnation in theosophy deserves continued critical engagement, both as a religious idea and as a cultural artifact that shaped and was shaped by the modern world. So let's now go on to the core of this belief and the related cosmology. Blavatsky envisioned reincarnation not merely as an individual phenomenon, but as a principle that underpinned the very fabric of the cosmos. In her esoteric cosmology, our universe was not singular, but one in an immense cosmic chain of universes, each successively arising, flourishing, and dissolving in an endless rhythm of creation and destruction. Each universe, she taught, does not simply appear once, but manifests cyclically, like a cosmic breath inhaling and exhaling across eternity. This vision was anything but metaphysical. Blavatsky held that these cycles of emergence and dissolution served a higher metaphysical purpose, the gradual self-realization of the divine. The divine, in her view, did not begin as fully self-aware, but attained self-consciousness through its own periodic manifestations in the realm of finite minds, chiefly human beings. Human evolution from lower life forms was thus not incidental, but essential to this cosmic aim. Blavatsky conceptualized the universe itself as a living organism, constituted by spirit and matter, which she saw as two poles of a single underlying substance. Spirit for her was primary. It generated matter by imprinting itself upon the formless void through the vehicle of ideas. These ideas were made manifest in the material world by Fohat, a dynamic force she likened to both eros and electricity, an agent of attraction, animation, and divine will. Though not a deity in the personal sense, Fohat served as the vital link between the spiritual and material realms, transmuting divine intention into natural law. Blavatsky articulated a dual process governing existence, involution and evolution. Involution described the descent of spirit into matter, the moment spirit became embodied and tangible, whereas evolution marked the spirit's gradual ascent back towards its immaterial origins. This rhythmic alternation was captured in her metaphor of the great breath, a ceaseless cosmic respiration. One full cycle of this breath, comprising an out-breathing creation and an in-breathing dissolution, she called Manvantara, a Sanskrit term she used to denote a vast epoch of cosmic activity. At the outset of a Manvantara, the unmanifest source, Parabrahman, emitted Mula Prakriti, the root substance of matter. From this, a hierarchical series of emanations unfolded, resembling a metaphysical champagne fountain in which each successive level flowed from the one above. This schema, deeply indebted to Neoplatonic and Kabbalistic thought, did not exhaust the source. Parabrahman remained infinite, even as it emanated its essence. Following this initial outpouring came the first logos, the abstract divine principle, and then the second logos, also known as the demiurge. This demiurge was no singular figure, but an army of conscious entities, the Dhyan Chohans, who functioned as the universe's architects and custodians of karma. These beings, analogous to Christian angels or Buddhist Dhyani Buddhas, oversaw the unfolding of cosmic law. From this divine intelligibility emerged the universal soul, the matrix from which all individual monads, the immortal reincarnating sparks of divine essence, were born. Each monad, upon entering the universe at the start of a Manvantara, began a cycle of successive incarnations, taking on a new personality with each life. Through this process, the monad gradually overcame the illusions of Maya, the ephemeral world of appearances, and moved toward greater spiritual awareness. This path culminated in the paranirvana, a return to the divine source, followed by pralaya, a period of cosmic rest before the cycle resumed anew. Reincarnation for Blavatsky was not limited to humans. All forms of life, plants, animals, humans, and even cosmic beings like the Dhyan Chohans, were engaged in this endless spiral of transformation. Today's human soul, she suggested, had once inhabited simpler life forms. Today's celestial intelligences had once been human. Evolution, then, was not finite, but eternal. What then drives this perpetual ascent? Blavatsky offered three interlocking explanations. First, the universe possesses an innate drive towards evolution, an inherent tendency towards complexity and self-awareness. Second, higher spiritual beings assist the progress of those below them, creating a cosmic pedagogy of mutual aid. Third, the law of karma ensures that every action propels the soul forward or backward, imparting moral consequence to the evolutionary journey. Blavatsky's macrocosmic doctrine of reincarnation represents a bold metaphysical vision in which the spiritual destiny of the individual mirrors the unfolding of the universe itself. Evolution and involution are not mere metaphors, but metaphysical mechanisms through which the cosmos and its denizens strive toward the realization of divine consciousness. Her teachings thus position reincarnation as the engine of a vast and sacred cosmology, uniting ethics, ontology, and cosmogenesis in a single awe-inspiring narrative. Blavatsky's cosmological system extended reincarnation beyond the individual soul, imagining instead a vast drama in which monads, immortal spiritual units, embarked on a journey through planetary systems, cycles of cosmic time, and the evolutionary spectrum of life itself. Central to this vision was the notion of the life wave, a term she used to describe collectives of monads evolving together through successive incarnations and stages of development. According to Blavatsky, monads do not begin their journey with individual consciousness or moral responsibility. In the early stages of their evolution, prior to the development of manas, the rational faculty associated with the ego, they existed in a state untouched by karma. Their progress was assured not by choice but by design, aided by higher spiritual beings who guided them onto what we might think of as a cosmic conveyor belt. Evolution was at first automatic, but this changed once monads developed the capacity for self-awareness. At that point, they were metaphorically asked to step off the conveyor and walk unaided. Now responsible for their actions, they became subject to karma. Blavatsky imagined the cosmos as a vast system of interlinked realities, in which each visible planet, such as Earth, was but one of 7 interconnected spheres or globes, comprising what she called a planetary chain. In our solar system, Earth is globe D of the Earth chain, the lowest and most material of these spheres. Surrounding it are 3 subtler globes on either side, A, B, and C preceding it, and E, F, and G following. These are not physical planets in the conventional sense, but different planes of existence that interpenetrate Earth and operate at varying degrees of materiality and spirituality. The evolutionary journey of the life wave, then, unfolds across this chain in what Blavatsky called a round. Each round takes the life wave through all 7 globes in order, from A to G, before beginning again. In total, a planetary chain undergoes 7 such rounds during its manvantara, or active life cycle. Between each round is a period of rest known as obscuration, and after the 7th round, the chain itself dissolves in what Blavatsky termed planetary dissolution. Life then migrates to a new planetary chain, in a process akin to reincarnation on a cosmic scale. Blavatsky taught that humanity evolved on the now extinct lunar chain before arriving on Earth, and would one day evolve beyond it. According to this schema, monads presently incarnated on Earth have already traversed the first 3.5 rounds of the Earth chain. They began on the ethereal globe A and gradually descended into denser forms of matter, passing through mineral, vegetable, animal, and proto-human states. The midpoint of the 4th round on our Earth is crucial. It marks the transition from involution, spirit descending into matter, to evolution, spirit reascending. From this point, monads begin their conscious return journey toward spiritualization. Blavatsky explained that this planetary evolution unfolded not only through physical transformation, but through racial stages of humanity's development, each marked by a root race. These were 7 successive stages of human evolution, each comprising 7 sub-races, which the monad must pass through in order to achieve full self-realization. The earliest root races were highly ethereal. The first, known as the self-born, were sexless, luminous beings who reproduced by budding and lived on the mythical, imperishable sacred land. The second, termed the sweat-born, were similarly insubstantial and engaged in contemplative yogic states. As the process of materialization continued, the third root race, the Lemurians, emerged with physical bodies and sexual reproduction, living on a lost continent called Lemuria. These early Lemurians were hermaphroditic and reproduced via egg-like structures. Over time, sexual dimorphism developed and they became recognizably male and female. It was during this period that higher beings intervened, bestowing manas or intellect upon certain Lemurians, thereby introducing karma into human life for the first time. With manas came moral responsibility, and from this point forward, reincarnation involved the accumulation of karmic consequences. Prior to the gift of manas, Lemurians were spiritually innocent, and their death-rebirth cycle was a simple matter of regeneration. But with reason came the full drama of human evolution, suffering, and spiritual struggle. The fourth root race, the Atlanteans, were intellectually advanced and developed language, science, and civilization. Their continent, Atlantis, eventually sank beneath the sea. The Atlantean era marked the height of materialism and moral decline. According to Blavatsky, their misuse of reproductive powers and descent into hedonism invoked the curse of karma, resulting in their fall. Some remnant of the Atlanteans, she claimed, still exist today in isolated and degenerated forms. The current root race, the Aryan, arose in Asia about 1 million years ago and represents the fifth evolutionary stage of humanity. The Aryan epoch, according to Blavatsky, is one of spiritual reawakening. Positioned at the midpoint between matter and spirit, it marks a balance between intellectual development and the re-emergence of higher spiritual faculties such as telepathy and clairvoyance. This race was also charged with preserving esoteric truths through symbolism and allegory, a response to the increasing materialism of previous cycles. Looking forward, Blavatsky prophesied the emergence of a sixth and eventually a seventh root race. The seeds of the sixth race, she claimed, were already visible in certain spiritualized segments of the population, particularly in America. This race would begin to transcend matter altogether, gradually shedding physical form. Upon completing the revolutionary journey through all 7 races and 7 rounds, the most advanced monads would become the Anchohans, joining the ranks of the spiritual intelligences that guide the cosmos. These perfected beings, no longer tethered to matter, would then ascend to higher planetary chains and ultimately to other solar systems, continuing their journey until the cosmos itself enters Pralaya, the Great Rest. At that final moment, they would achieve nirvana, a state of ultimate union with the divine. Blavatsky's vision, though complex and often speculative, offers a sweeping esoteric narrative of cosmic, planetary, and human reincarnation. It presents evolution not as a blind process, but as a spiritually guided journey, driven by karma, assisted by divine intelligences, and culminating in the return of the soul to its divine origin. In the later stages of her thought, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky elaborated a richly layered model of the human being, one that mirrored the sevenfold structure of the cosmos itself. Known as the saptaparna, Sanskrit for seven-leaved plant, this septenary constitution served as the microcosmic analog to the macrocosmic cycles of planetary and cosmic reincarnation she so vividly described. Each principle, from the grossest matter to the most refined spirit, played a specific and indispensable role in the processes of life, death, rebirth, and spiritual ascent. Blavatsky's 7 principles were hierarchically arranged, ranging from the purely physical to the divine. These were the physical body, Tula Sharira, vitality, Prana or Jiva, the astral double, Linga Sharira, the animal soul, Kamarupa, the human soul, Manas, the spiritual soul, Buddhi, and the divine spirit, Atman, While these could be grouped broadly into body, soul, and spirit, as she acknowledged by linking earlier tripartite models with this more elaborate schema, each level represented a specific mode of consciousness or energy that contributed to the integrity of the human being. The physical body, composed of the densest form of matter, functioned merely as a temporary vehicle animated by prana, the breath of life. Blavatsky described prana not simply as a vital force, but as the active energy responsible for physiological phenomena. Shaped by the astral double, this etheric blueprint molded the material form under the guidance of prana. Beyond these lay the Kamarupa, the seat of desire and instinctual will, which Blavatsky referred to as the beast in us. It was through this principle that our baser impulses, particularly those related to pleasure and sensuality, exerted their influence. Yet it was precisely this element that the manas or human soul was meant to transcend. Manas, bestowed during the Lemurian epoch, was the rational, self reflective consciousness that allowed for moral discernment and the formation of individual ego. It was both the source of our highest achievements and, when tethered to the lower principles, the root of our suffering. Manas was itself divided into a higher and lower aspect. The lower gravitated toward the desires of the Kamarupa, whereas the higher aspired toward union with Buddhi, the intuitive and spiritual soul. The destiny of a human life, in Blavatsky's account, hinged upon the direction of this inner tension. If the higher manas successfully allied with Buddhi, the immortal part of the self would evolve. If it succumbed to the lower pole, it risked stagnation and even disintegration of its individuality after death. The topmost principle, Atman, represented the divine spark, an impersonal ray of the universal spirit, common to all beings and ultimately inseparable from its source. Atman, she said, was not an individual possession, but like sunlight, diffused and impartial, shining equally on all. When united with Buddhi and the higher manas, it formed the monad, the enduring spiritual core that progressed through successive incarnations. Death in this model occurred when the upper triad, Atman, Buddhi, and higher manas, separated from the lower quaternary. The physical body, along with prana and the astral double, disintegrated or lingered temporarily in ghostly form. The remaining principles entered Kamaloka, a liminal astral realm where they underwent a process of purification. There, the higher and lower parts of manas struggled for ascendancy. If the spiritual aspect prevailed, the upper triad passed into Devachan, a state of blissful rest analogous to heaven, where it experienced the spiritual fruits of the previous life in idealized form. Devachan was not permanent. After a period ranging from a millennium to several thousand years, the monad still composed of the upper triad felt a renewed thirst for life and was drawn once more toward incarnation. In this descent, it gathered a new set of lower principles, reassembled from the same life atoms that had constituted its previous embodiments. These atoms were attracted by karmic affinity, shaped not only by individual will but also by ancestral heredity. Thus, a scientific thread ran through Blavatsky's esotericism, as she suggested heredity and memory were woven together through a kind of karmic material continuity. Karma, in Blavatsky's system, was a law of universal equilibrium rather than a punitive force. It was not a deity meting out justice, but the impersonal adjustment of causes and effects across lives, designed to restore cosmic balance. Human beings created karma through thought, intention, and action. Nature, as the mechanism of karma, merely ensured that the energetic consequences of those actions returned in kind. Blavatsky employed a vivid metaphor to explain this. Karma is not the bow that breaks one's arm when bent too far. It is the immutable law by which the bow, when forcibly displayed, springs back into alignment. For Blavatsky, karma had both individual and collective dimensions. The misfortunes of class, gender, or a nation were not exclusively personal, but part of a broader network of group karma. Yet this did not absolve people of ethical responsibility. She insisted that karmic reality demanded not fatalism, but moral action. One must alleviate suffering, not excuse it. For to do so was to balance collective karma and contribute to the moral evolution of the world. Importantly, karma did not operate from the outset of human existence. It only became relevant after humanity developed egos, self-reflective centers of agency capable of moral choice. Prior to the middle of the Lemurian period, monads moved through life forms without accruing karmic debt, evolving instead through automatic progression and guidance of higher beings. Only with the awakening of manas did moral responsibility and thus karmic reincarnation begin. Blavatsky's esoteric anthropology thus offered more than a metaphysical framework. It presented a spiritual psychology that aimed to explain the structure of the self, the nature of moral development, and the ultimate purpose of suffering. Reincarnation was not merely a return to life, but a journey toward divinity, in which the soul progressively purified itself through successive births, karmic trials, and spiritual insight. By aligning the microcosm of human consciousness with the macrocosm of universal cycles, Blavatsky fashioned a system in which death, rebirth, and karma were integral not only to esoteric cosmology, but to the lived ethical experience. In her words, it was only through the constant rebirths of one and the same individuality that the mystery of good and evil could be understood. The inequalities of life, far from arbitrary, became intelligible as part of a vast process of self-perfection, a process in which suffering was not a punishment but a stage on the path to spiritual liberation. So, by the early 1880s, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky had decisively shifted from her earlier theory of metempsychosis articulated in Isis Unveiled to a more expansive and nuanced doctrine of reincarnation. The move was not incidental. In the metempsychosis model, immortality was reserved for a spiritual elite few, while the majority of souls faced annihilation, an outlook that offered little comfort to those seeking solace from loss and existential meaning. Seances, in this model, would yield no reunion with loved ones. The dead had either transcended to another sphere or ceased to exist altogether. Blavatsky's later teachings provided a more appealing alternative. Though she continued to reject the spiritualist claim that one could communicate with the spirits of the dead, she introduced a consolatory vision. The deceased, now resting in Devachan, enjoyed the rewards of their past lives and would one day return to earth in a more advanced form. The continuity of the soul was affirmed, but always at a remove. Unlike the French Spiritists, who posited rapid and intimate cycles of rebirth, perhaps even within the same family line, Blavatsky emphasized long evolutionary arcs spanning geological epochs. Reincarnation was never immediate. A newborn child could not be the reincarnated soul of a recently deceased grandparent. Each new life represented a radically new personality, formed from the karmic and spiritual residues of the last but not identical to it. Blavatsky's cosmology thus privileged impersonality and transcendence over sentimentality and interpersonal continuity. Rooted in the doctrine of the seven principles, her vision described the gradual purification of the monad, that is, the indivisible core of being composed of Atma and Buddhi, through the assimilation of experience across countless lifetimes. In this scheme, earthly attachments were fleeting. Only the spiritual core endured, destined to return to its divine origin. Her theory, far from being elitist, cast all human beings as fundamentally equal in their spiritual essence. The Atma, after all, was universal. In this sense, her reincarnation doctrine upheld the theosophical ideal of universal brotherhood, radically egalitarian even if metaphysically remote. Moreover, the teachings reflected a distinctive fin de siècle sensibility, the conviction that humanity was poised at a decisive turning point. According to Blavatsky, incarnation in the fifth Aryan root race during the fourth round of the Earth chain represented the equilibrium of spirit and matter. This was the cosmic fulcrum, after which she believed evolution would begin its long arc back toward spirit. The significance to the present moment could hardly be overstated. Humanity stood at the critical juncture where spiritual will, ethical action, and cosmic necessity converged. This emphasis on personal agency resonated with the esoteric ideal of the human as a self-conscious co-creator of destiny. Yet, paradoxically, Blavatsky also described monads as being caught up in an inevitable stream of evolution, suggesting that progress would unfold regardless of individual volition. Herein lay a persistent tension in her work. Was it an act of suffering itself that propelled evolution, or the soul's moral and spiritual response to suffering? Both answers seem to hold. Ultimately, karmic reincarnation in Blavatsky's system served a dual purpose. On the one hand, it functioned as a cosmic mechanism of moral equilibrium, vindicating divine justice by revealing suffering and inequality as the just fruit of previous actions. On the other, it animated the grand narrative of cosmic evolution. Salvation, understood here as liberation into nirvana, was not achieved through divine grace alone, but through eons of suffering and the experiential assimilation of both good and evil. Only by knowing evil, she insisted, could good be truly understood. In this vision, the individual becomes a microcosm of the cosmos, mirroring its cycles of involution and evolution, rest and rebirth. Reincarnation was not simply a return, but an ascent, a long pilgrimage through suffering toward the ultimate realization of the divine within. This is it for today's video, and this is the bibliography, though the main reference is Chase from 2017, as I mentioned early on. So thank you so much for watching the video up to this point. And if you watched up until this point, leave me an earth emoji or a globe D. Leave me a globe D emoji, which now you should know that is the earth. So maybe I shouldn't have said the earth so that I would test whether you had paid attention throughout the episode. Anyway, so if you like this content of delivering free academic scholarship, free for everybody to watch and listen and get educated from, I would really appreciate it if you consider supporting me on Patreon, PayPal, Coffee. You can super thank me in the comments. You can become a member here on YouTube. You can check out my services at drangelapuka.com. There are many ways to help me out. So if you have the means, please do so and help out this project. And also, if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and activate the notification bell because YouTube is naughty and might not notify you when I'm uploading a new video, and that would be very sad. And then you would leave me comments saying, I never know when you're live, and it's like, if you activate the notification bell, you will always know. Also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter on my website so that you also have some good mementos of what's going on, plus things that I don't really post on social media. And leave me a comment. I really want to know what you think about this episode and if you found it informative. What are your views about reincarnation? Do you find that any of your views of reincarnation have been somewhat inspired by Theosophy? Perhaps you didn't even know about what was the conceptualization that Theosophy had of reincarnation, but you may still have been influenced by it because it has penetrated the cultural fabric of Western historicism so much. But yeah, let me know what are your thoughts about reincarnation and whether you think they have been influenced by Theosophy. Also, share this video around. This is also another and very free way of supporting my work. Please just spam my videos to anybody who might be interested. I really appreciate it. That's how the Symposium can grow. And thank you very much for being here. I really hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now.